of teaching the youth. AJ was on vacation. And so after Wednesday, when I got through doing that, I had to go home, and I still had a little bit of work to do. So I went upstairs and was sending out some emails and so forth. And I hear my wife and my daughter and her boyfriend, they come home. And all of a sudden, I hear this screaming noise. And all of a sudden, then I hear them, Clint, calm down, please, come down, hurry. So I come running down there. And my wife is nowhere to be found. She's locked herself in the car. And I see Jeremy, Madison's boyfriend, and Madison, they've got some hand killer. And to be using Jeremy's exact words, he was acting like a little princess. Because he was taking the spray, and he was spraying, and then he would run back as fast as he could. And that's when they started yelling for me. And when they sprayed this brown recluse, it started having babies. All of a sudden, there's hundreds of these things running around. And so I come down, and I see people yelling, but I don't see them anywhere. They have gone. And I've got a golf club that I've hit pretty well lately. And so I started killing these spiders, being the superhero that I am. And I was thinking, you know, my life had been interrupted for a short period of time. I was just upstairs doing my own business, but somebody called me down, and my life was interrupted. Has your life ever been interrupted? Ever been a time you've been interrupted? You know, certainly small little things like that can come up. But what about something big in your life? Something big happened in your life, and your life was interrupted, and it was so big that everything else got put on hold. Has that ever happened?
This would be a great illustration for you to interrupt. If you turn your microphone on.
Oh, so I was doing so well. Yeah, we planned that. Thanks for interrupting. But anyway, I was thinking about Cameron Wood. And here was Cameron Wood doing what God wanted him to do. He'd gone to seminary, he was getting out, he was about to start his first job in the ministry. He goes to the doctor and finds out he's got cancer. And his life is interrupted, isn't it? Everything's put on hold for a while, and his loved ones, life's interrupted. I was thinking about Mike Rule, a good friend of mine, member of this church, and Mike found a little freckle on his nose, and goes to the doctor to see what it is, and finds out he's got melanoma. He has to get his nose removed, and the cancer taken care of, and then his nose replaced. And his life was put on hold. I thought about Jimbo Burry. Jimbo went to Africa last year, and he gets his leg infected, and as he's flying home, they won't let him leave Belgium, and they put him in a hospital. His life is interrupted. His life is put on hold. And I think about my sister one day coming home from work, and a drunk driver hits her, and she can't use her legs for a long period of time. Her life is put on hold, and then she loses her job because of that. I think about people who their parents get sick, and all of a sudden they've got to be caregivers, and their life is put on hold. Or you go to work one day, and your boss says, you know what, I want to see you at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, you go in your boss's office, and they just look at you and say, you know what, your services are no longer needed. And your life is interrupted. Or I think about a spouse that comes home one day, and they tell their spouse, you know what, I just don't love you anymore. And their life's interrupted. That's the world we live in, isn't it? And you know what? Some of you are going through some interruptions in your life right now. And others of you that are not, at some point in time you will. That's the one thing that's certain. All of us will have interruptions in our life. And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at several people who experienced some interruptions in their life. And if you want to, get out your handout that was in the newsletter. Or you can just go to Mark chapter 5, and we're going to start in verse 21. And it says, when Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue rulers, named Jairus, came. So here was Jesus, and he'd been preaching on one side of the lake in a different country, and he gets in the boat with his disciples, and he goes across the lake to another country. He gets out of the boat, and there waiting for him already is a very large crowd. And we've come to expect that, but the thing is, there's one man there that's not expected. There's this man named Jairus, who is a religious leader that's there, that came to see Jesus. And why that's so strange is you don't have to be a Bible scholar to know that Jesus and the religious leaders didn't get along, did they? We see this conflict time and time again. Matter of fact, the book of Mark, all we've got to do is go back to Mark chapter 1, and we see this time where Jesus had gone into a synagogue. Maybe it was Jairus' synagogue. We don't know that. But he goes into the synagogue and he gets rid of an evil spirit. And the religious leaders didn't like that. We look in Mark chapter 2 and we see that there's a story of a paralyzed man. And Jesus tells this man, your sins are forgiven. And all the religious leaders there are saying, hey, wait a minute. Only God can forgive sins. And Jesus goes, I know. Because that's who I am. And we just see this conflict time and time and time again. But here's this religious leader there in Jesus. And it tells us in verse 23, it says, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, my little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live. So Jesus went with him. So now we learn the reason why he's there. He's not there as a religious leader. He's there as a daddy. He's there as a daddy who has a need. And his little girl is not only sick, his little girl is dying. And so he's tried everything else, everything possible. And now he's saying, you know what? I don't really want to do this, but this Jesus guy has been healing people. So maybe if I could just go to this Jesus guy, maybe he can help. And so he goes to Jesus, and he has to swallow his pride, doesn't he? You ever had to swallow your pride? You ever been there? And so he goes to Jesus, and he goes, you know, I know we've had our differences of opinion. I know we haven't always gotten along. I know the religious leaders have been attacking you. I know I'm part of that. I need your help. See, my little girl is dying. And you know what? When your child is sick, or when your grandchild is sick, you'll do anything possible to help that child. You'll do anything. And you don't care if the person you go to is a Democrat or Republican. You don't care what their faith is. You don't care if you had an argument with them last week. If they can help, you're going to go to them. And that's what Jairus did. And he looked Jesus in the eye. He just got down on his knees and prayed to Jesus, can you help me? And Jesus said, absolutely. And they go. And they go to Jairus' house to help him. But in the meantime, it tells us a large crowd followed and pressed around him. So here is Jesus and here's Jairus. And they're going to Jairus' house to help his little daughter. But there's a crowd there still. And they're pressing up against Jesus. See, Jairus wasn't the only one that had a need. There was lots of people there that had needs. There was lots of people that needed Jesus. And it says that, and a woman who was there, who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, she had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors, and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. So there was this woman who needed Jesus as well. And she's spent everything she's had. She's had this bleeding disease for 12 years. She's bankrupt. All her money's gone. She's spent it on every doctor she could find. She's tried everything. She's drained emotionally. She's an outcast socially. Because in that time period, people thought if you were having bad things happen to you, bad things were happening, and you were a bad person. And if good things happened to you, you were a good person. And because bad things were happening, society would have just pushed her away. They wouldn't have wanted anything to do with her. She was also drained spiritually. Because she had a bleeding disease, she wasn't allowed to temple for 12 years. She could not go to church. She couldn't be with other people like that. And so for 12 years, she could not go to the temple and worship. So she was in need. And it says, and when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I could just touch his clothes, I would be healed. Talk about faith. Think about that. Here's this woman that's thinking, okay, here's this Jesus guy. You know, he's out healing all these people. And if I can just touch his garment, I'll be saved. I'll be healed. And it was even bigger sin because she was unclean to touch a rabbi. And so she goes and she grabs his cloak. And the Bible says, immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body, and she was free from her sight. Can you imagine what that's like? The minute she grabs his cloak, she just feels this healing, and she knows that she's healed. What an incredible thing that is, that she just feels that right away. But then something happens. And it said at once Jesus realized that the power had gone out from him. He turned around the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" You see the people crowding against you, the disciples answered, and yet you can ask, "Who touched me?" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Now let's just think about that for a minute. Here's Jesus, he's in this large crowd. There's people pushing against each other. We've all been in a large crowd, right? Pushing against each other. And he goes, "Who touched me?" And his disciples are looking at him like, "Are you serious? We're in this big crowd. We're all being touched. I mean, quit being a demon, Jesus. We're all being touched. And you have the nerve to say, 'Who touched me?'" And Jesus says, "Yeah, I felt the power coming out of me." Now, can you imagine if you're Jairus? Here's Jesus. Somebody's touching me in the crowd, and I'm not leaving here until I know who touched me. And here's Jairus going, "Jesus, come on, we've got to go. My daughter is at my house, and she's dying, and you're worried about who touched you. We got to go. We got things we got to do. This is important. We need to go take care of this." And Jesus is going, "I got to find that touch. Before I know it." Has that ever been you? That Jesus, his timing is not your timing? You need something done right now. And Jesus is going, "No, you've got to wait. I can't be rushed." I can sympathize with you. I've been there. I needed something right then, but God didn't do it. Maybe wait. And then it says, we drop down a few verses. It says, while Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead." They said, "Why bother the teacher anymore?" So here's some people, some friends of Jairus, that come from the house and say, "You know what, Jairus, we told you Jesus couldn't help you. But you had to go and you had to see this, but this guy's timing is not good. She's dead now. You don't need to bother him anymore. She's gone." And then Jesus says, overhearing what they said, Jesus told them, "Don't be afraid, just believe." So here's Jairus. His daughter has just died. And his friends have told him that. "Don't even quit bothering Jesus." And Jesus says, "Don't worry about that. Just ignore him." But you see, Jared believed as long as his daughter was alive that Jesus could heal him. And could heal him. But the minute that she died, he thought it was all over. And Jesus is saying, "You know what? Now you're going to see something. Now you're really going to see my power. Now you're really going to know who I am. Now you're going to see that." And it says after he put them away, because see, they went back to the house and all of these people, Jesus is saying, "She's just asleep." And I'm like, "Wait, no, she's not. She's dead." I mean, in that time period, they had professional mourners. These were people, when somebody died, you hired these people to come to your house, and they would wail, and they would cry, and they would throw ashes on their body, and all these kinds of things. They knew what a dead person looked like. And when Jesus said she's only asleep, they looked at him like, "You're nuts." And they began to laugh at him and mock at him. So then, he decides to, after he put them all out, he just took them all out of the house, and he took the child's father and mother and the disciples, which were Peter, James, and John, who were with him, and went where the child was. He took her by the hand, and he said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. So here's Jesus. He goes to the house, and he takes this dead girl by the hand. And he says, "Talitha cum." Now, Talitha cum was a common phrase in Jewish culture. And what it meant was, sweetie, time to get up. It was a term of endearment. It's kind of like if I go into one of my daughter's room, Madison or Ashton, to wake them up, and I knock on the door, and I walk in the door, and I go, sweetie, it's time to get up. And they go, okay. And then I go away for 10 minutes, and then I come back, and I have to do it all over again. Knock on the door again, sweetie, time to get up. But that's what he was doing. And see, Jesus, he had the power to heal the blind. He had the power to heal lepers and deaf people. Man, he has the power to raise people from the dead. And you know what? As believers, one day when we're in heaven and Jesus sees us, he's going to say, sweet, see, Jairus thought that when Jesus was interrupted, everything was messed up. But Jesus never gets interrupted. Jesus knows the plan, and he knows where he's going, and he knows the big picture. Sometimes we don't. So I want to give you 3 things that we can do when life gets interrupted. And the first thing is when Jesus' timing and our timing don't match, we need to wait. We need to wait. See, in our society, we're always taught that everything revolves around us. This is us, and this is the world. The world revolves around us. That's what our culture tries to tell us, that everything we need to do should be designed to make us happy. It should be for us. And Jesus is going, no, it's not it. And sometimes I'm going to make you wait because you need to learn something. You need to learn that the world does not revolve around you. It revolves around me. And sometimes he makes our plans and our timing wait so that we can learn that. It's kind of like a parent that you don't want to give your kids everything, do you? You want to give your kids everything they ask for? If we give our kids everything they ask for, what happens? We create a bunch of little, what? Spoiled brats. And they grow up to be adults that are spoiled and nobody wants to hang around with, right? And so as parents, we're trying to teach people that can't get in. A couple of weeks ago, we went down to Orlando on vacation. And we stopped at this gas station. And there was this lady and her daughter that was leaving the gas station. And the little girl was crying. She was all mad because she wanted some figurine that was in the store. And her mom wouldn't buy it. And so the little girl just goes walking out and she looks up at her mom and she goes, "You are the worst mommy in the whole world." And I was thinking, you know what? Sometimes we're like that. Sometimes God doesn't give us what we want when we want it. And we just look up at him and say, you know what? You're the worst daddy in the whole world. And God's saying, you know what? I'm doing it because I love you. I'm doing it because, you know what? I know the big picture. You don't know everything. And you're waiting because I know what it's going to happen. So when our timing doesn't match God's, we need to wait. Second thing is, when God's delays cost you something, we need to believe. You ever notice in the Bible, anytime that somebody comes up to Jesus and asks him to do something, he always asks them to do something that they're not willing to do. You remember the rich young ruler? The rich young ruler goes to Jesus and he asks him, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus says, "You got to keep the 10 Commandments." And the rich young ruler says, "I do that. I've kept them since I was a youth." Jesus says, "Okay. Go and sell everything that you have and give it to me and come follow me." You remember what the rich man, young ruler did? He left sad because he was very wealthy. He couldn't do that. Jesus asked him to do more than he was willing to do. And sometimes that's the case with us. And Jesus is asking us to do more than we're willing to do. And I think for me, one of the reasons that I think I waited so long to surrender the call to go into ministry was because I kept giving this and this and this and this, and this was the last thing. And I was like, if I give you that, God, you got 100% of me, and I got to fully depend upon you for everything. He was asking me to give something that I wasn't willing to give. He asked Jairus to give something he wasn't willing to. See, Jairus understood that Jesus could heal his daughter while she was alive. And he understood that Jesus would go. But he never understood the power of Jesus. And so what ended up happening, Jesus said, you know what? I'm going to blow your mind. I'm going to show you some things that you can't even imagine. And so not only did one miracle happen, that the girl was raised from the dead, but two miracles happened. There was a transformation in Jairus' life because he saw the power of Jesus. He believed. And the woman, here's this woman who believed that, you know what, if I can just touch Jesus' garment, that I'll be healed. But I just want to touch it, and then I want to leave. I don't want anybody to know I was there, because I know I'm not supposed to touch it. And I'll leave, and I'll be healed, and I'll go. And Jesus said, no, don't work that way. You need to come forward publicly. And you need to know not only my power, but you need to know my love. Because she didn't understand the love of God. She didn't understand the love of Jesus. She thought that if I go back, that he'll take that miracle away from me that I saw. And when she went back and he didn't, she realized that he loved her and that he cared about her and that she was important. Now, if you notice, I left out some verses. Well, let's talk about the third point first. When God's priorities are not normal, we need to trust. And what I mean by that is that if you read the Bible and you look at the priorities of God, don't they always seem to contradict what our priorities are? It seems like every time Jesus does something, I think I would do the opposite. Here's Jairus. Jairus is a religious ruler. He's a wealthy man. He's a civic leader. He's got influence. He's got money. He's got all these things in the community. He's got his act going on. But here's this woman who's got nothing. She's an outcast. She has no influence. She has no money. She's spiritually drained, socially drained, physically drained. And who does he go to? Ever notice Jesus just attracted messed up people? And aren't you glad? Because we're all messed up. And he's attracted to messed up people. And he does things that are counterintuitive sometimes. He tells us that we're supposed to love our enemies. What? He tells us that we're supposed to serve those that hate us. He tells us that we are supposed to lose our life to gain our life. That doesn't seem right. Matter of fact, in 1 Corinthians it says, but God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are. So perhaps maybe when God's timing and ours don't match, and perhaps when God's delays seem to cost us something, maybe we need to believe. And when God's priorities don't seem to be our priorities, maybe we need to trust him. Maybe he knows something bigger about the moment that we're in. Maybe he knows something that we don't know. Maybe he sees the bigger picture that we don't see. Now let's go back and let's look at verse 33 and 34, which we just skipped a while ago. It says, the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembled with fear, told him the whole truth. So here's this woman. She comes and she bows at the feet of Jesus, just like Jairus has done. Tells him the whole thing. She's in fear, thinking Jesus is going to take this miracle back. And this is what Jesus says. He said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be free from your suffering. If you notice that he called her daughter, why would he call her daughter? You know, we looked at the differences between Jairus and this woman, but let's look at the similarities. Both of them, when they saw Jesus, they bowed down to his feet. Both of them tried everything they possibly can to rectify their situation, and nothing worked. And you remember how old this little girl was? How old was she? 12. She was 12 years old. Probably grown up in a very good home, wealthy father, probably had everything that she needed, was taken care of. The way a little girl should be, right? But then all of a sudden, her circumstance changed, and she's dying, and she needs help. But how long has this woman been suffering? How long? 12 years. She's been suffering for the whole time that this little girl had been alive. And Jesus comes up to her and says, come on. Why? Because what he was saying was this woman is, you know what? You're just as important to me as this little girl. You are just as important. And I love you just as much as I love this little girl. And sometimes we fail to see God's power, and we fail to see God's love for us. We can't imagine how big His love for us is. And so what He really wants to do is every day, He just wants to reach His hand down to us and say, sweetie, it's time to get up. It's time to get up, and we're going to walk through this day together, and I'm going to be there right beside you. God loves us. And God hasn't forgotten about us when we're going through times of trouble. When our lives are interrupted, and sometimes we think, God, don't you care about me? Don't you love me? Have you forgotten about me? Because I'm sure this woman does that. What we need to know is that God loves me. He loves you. And I want you, as loud as you can, on the count of 3, to say that God loves me. 1, 2, 3. God loves me. Can we do a little louder? 1, 2, 3. God loves me. And you know what? Some of you needed to hear that today. Because some of you are going through some things in your life and you're going, God just doesn't love me. And He's forgotten all about me. And I needed help now. You start playing there. But here's what I want you to know. It's that God knows. He knows what you're going through in your life. He knows what it is. And He cares. He cares about what you're going through, and He wants to help you. Finally, He can. He has the power to help us through any situation. And Jairus, who was his enemy, and this woman that was an outcast, and this little girl that was dying, He showed His love for her as well. And He shows His love for us every day. And this is the time of the service where we give an invitation. Some of you have never known what that love that we're talking about is, because you've never had a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. As we sing this song in a few minutes, I just want to give you the opportunity if you've never accepted Christ to come down forward. We can do that. Some of you may just have a problem in your life that's just kind of interrupted your life. This altar is going to be available if you want to come and pray about that, or you can pray right in your seat. Turn that over. Give it to Him. Don't be like Jairus and this woman and say, you know what, I'm going to try everything else first, and then I'm going to come to Jesus. You know what, we need to be people to give it to Jesus first. We need to turn that over to Him. I'm going to say during this time of invitation, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you. I just thank you for the examples that you give us in the Bible, that you tell us the story of Jairus and this little girl this morning, Father, because it can give us hope and it can help to grow our faith. More importantly, it shows that your love for us, that you love each and every one of us, that you don't put one above the other just because of where they are in life, Father. And I just pray today that the decision